Hi, this is Dave Belsky, your host of the Talent and Cannabis Sunset Session. I am the CEO and founder of FlowerHire. Today we have an incredible guest, Max Simon, the CEO and founder of Green Flower Media. Max, thanks for coming.
Really good to be with you.
Oh man, it's a long time coming. I feel like we've been chatting for years and had a lovely afternoon here. So much to talk about. But for folks that don't know what Green Flower is, why don't you tell people what Green Flower is?
Yeah, Green Flower is a leading education company in cannabis, and we power workforce development through 20 university partners and community colleges. We do the Ganjier certification, which is a cannabis sommelier program.
On NBC National News recently.
Yeah,
Today's Show. What?
That took a long time to get done. And then we train cannabis professionals inside of these cannabis companies with credentials and learning and development solutions and that kind of thing.
Wow, so education, training, and credentials for the cannabis workforce.
Exactly.
And that is such a needed thing. And I've there's some companies out there doing work in this space, but you've built the biggest platform with the most content available to different parts of the industry. Like you have higher learning, creating entire sort of bachelor level coursework as it relates to the business of cannabis. You have community colleges that are offering more workforce development oriented coursework to people that are looking for jobs in cultivation or retail. You sell the sort of training to cannabis companies to help teach their employees about cannabis and how to grow it and how to talk to customers about it. And you have the Ganjier program, which is this sort of master course of being an expert, of being able to look at cannabis and identify its lineage and evaluate and analyze its everything, from its potency, its flavor, its terpene profile. A lot to unpack here. But you've been doing this for a while. Like I started FlowerHire in 2017. I know there's been lots of people working in this industry for decades, supporting their family and living a lifestyle. But in terms of like an ancillary business to cannabis that wasn't nutrients and wasn't lights, right? Or packaging or whatever, you started in 2014. And talk to me about your career before the decision to start Green Flower.
I mean, I've basically always been in online education. I helped build a guy named Deepok Chopra's online business, education business. Some people have, some people haven't.
Spiritual guy,
right. But what was cool that we reached hundreds of millions of people, and I kind of feel like we had a big part in mainstreaming meditation and making meditation acceptable and accessible to the world. And
which is a helpful thing in today's world, to bring that message and that tool to people to find that balance and find their why and get through, and reflect. Like it must have felt good doing that work.
I mean, it's really hard work to be early, but that's exactly what brought me to cannabis. Is I've been a medical cannabis patient for decades. I've used this plant as my daily medicine. I have kind of an ADHD condition that's been difficult to manage in my life. And I've always used cannabis ever since I was little. And so, back it was 2013, I got a consulting gig to help start one of the early cannabis companies in California. And it just opened my eyes to the fact that this plant is going to be an amazing, fast-growing, valuable industry. And to do that, we need to have educated people. So I just knew my background in education and in being in these kind of ancillary, unique spaces that the world doesn't understand yet. You can build really great businesses that make a huge impact that's very fulfilling, because the success of it means that you are having something genuinely good be adopted by the world. And so I kind of saw that opportunity in cannabis really early, and I went for it, just went for it.
And you've gone all into it, and now you're 8 years and counting into that journey. And you've built, for those that don't know, Green Flower Media has built more coursework related to all aspects of this plant than any other platform I have seen out there. And we're in the business of workforce, but in a different angle, right? Like we're helping people get jobs in cannabis. We're doing more on the executive search and that salaried professional level, and we're helping people who've never worked in cannabis, evaluate if it's the right industry for them, and helping companies hire the right skills, and also helping folks that are in the industry find different or better or more But overall, the cannabis industry is hiring hundreds of thousands of people in the next 5 years, of which 95% have never worked in cannabis. And there's more of a diversity of job type and job function as it relates to growing this plant and selling this plant and everything in between than every other industry on the planet. So bringing in a workforce where hundreds of thousands of people are going to be hired that have never worked professionally in cannabis, and helping those people succeed, helping give them information so they can get the jobs they want, helping the people that get the jobs actually, be successful and move forward is a huge area of opportunity. I think that it doesn't go without saying. So talk to me about like the importance of this term credentialing as it relates to, we can just talk about retail, right? What is the notion of credentialing in other industries, and what have you seen in terms of cannabis, in terms of why that is a needed part of helping this industry mature?
Well, it'll be a surprise to no one in cannabis that cannabis is incredibly difficult and complex, right?
Yes.
Like everybody that's in, it's this weird, if you really think about it, it's this weird paradox. Like the rest of the world thinks it's just a bunch of like lazy stoners doing nothing, and yet in reality, it's like the most difficult thing
the hardest
ever,
working
right?
people.
The hardest working people, the talented, intelligent. But why are they working so hard? Is because it's really complex, and there's so much to learn.
And they believe in it.
And they believe in it, right? But it's really difficult. That's my point. And so, besides fixing some of the big issues in the industry, the legislation and the equity and the taxes and the licensing and all that stuff, you actually need to train people for an industry to be successful in a highly complex, very difficult industry. And I kind of hope that I can shout from the rooftops that this is one of the reasons why the industry struggles so much, is it's so many people coming in that don't know anything or have very kind of limited hearsay knowledge, and at the retail level. So you ask, why is credentialing important?
Well, and companies are moving a million miles an hour in this space with lots of challenges, but there's a need to be able to onboard those folks at retail. When I look at retail in cannabis, it's the face of the job, of the cannabis job.
So important. It's such a critically important job, and none of these people are getting, not none of them, but few of them are getting any training. So you ask the question, like, what's credentialing do? In every industry that's ever existed, a credential is just a validation. That's all it is. It's a verification. This person has this level of knowledge, and they can demonstrate it by validating it through an exam or a test or something like that. So why is that valuable in cannabis? Well, because you have a lot of unvalidated people that are making stuff up and making mistakes and, quite frankly, just making a lot of stuff up, And
a lack of standardization.
Right.
Because it isn't mature, and there's been tribal knowledge to a lot of ways, and passed down to different people that are looking at things differently, and so the idea of people having a baseline of knowledge that they've gone through some type of course or done the steps necessary to achieve a credential could bring what into retail as it relates to the benefit of the dispensary owner and the customer or patient.
Well, again, no secret that better, knowledgeable, more experienced people perform better in cannabis environments, period, right?
Any job.
Right? Any job. But people that actually know what they're doing are inherently going to perform better. So
people that have had some type of training.
Right? Sometimes it's like, hello, cannabis industry, don't you see how obvious this is? People are turning over like crazy. People are making mistakes like crazy. People are giving bad service like crazy. And in particular, so why should the business owner care? Because it's super expensive not to care. It's really expensive to have that much turnover happening. It's really expensive to make mistakes on your cultivation and degrade the quality of your product or get less yield. It's really expensive to have a manufacturer taint your manufacturing process and have to throw out batches. And this stuff happens all the time with uneducated, unvalidated people, right? And so while I have the utmost respect for all of the legacy people and all the places that have that tribal knowledge, there's just too many people coming into this industry in too many different directions and too many areas around the country to say that it's going to be okay without some level of validation, And so that's what the credentials do. That's what we're attempting to do, is validate that people in this industry have baseline, fundamental level of proficiency and knowledge to lift this industry up and make sure we do it right.
Great message. The customer too. I mean, if you think about the customer going into a retail experience, it's not a recreational cannabis user historically, is asking somebody, usually for some wellness-oriented purpose or medical reason, like what should they have, and they're not handled properly, and that interaction with that consumer not only could, lessen their long-term value as a customer, likely will, but it might make them take their business somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, the whole original intent behind Ganjier was that we have people providing service to consumers, and that person needs to be really expertly trained. And what do they need to be trained on? They need to be trained in the products, right? You have to have a really deep appreciation and understanding of products. You have to understand how those products translate into effects and experiences. And you have to have then service principles of how you actually navigate this whole world of cannabis. So that was the intent behind Ganjier, to try to solve that problem with a qualification to make somebody a master of cannabis service. It's kind of gotten bigger than that as it's developed and grown, but these problems are solvable. These problems are solvable. It's just that the industry needs to continue to adopt them and appreciate them.
Yeah, and on the cultivation side, you and I were talking earlier about, that is the other part of this industry that people don't really think about when they think about jobs in cannabis often, or the truth behind the numbers that come out in like Leafly's job report, and that probably cultivation is the largest percentage of those jobs. And you're talking about a workforce, sometimes rural, sometimes urban, but that has not necessarily worked in the field of cannabis cultivation in any type of operation at scale, if they have. And this is the baseline of the industry. So someone coming in and like the difference between having 2% more yield from your poundage be able to be sold could be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Lots of money. Yeah, I mean, now that I know so much about cannabis, I've realized cannabis is arguably the most amazing plant on the planet. Arguably, you could get into the qualities of cannabis, how fast it grows, that it grows everywhere, that it can produce food and seed and rope, and and let's not forget the fact that it produces this incredibly diverse range of cannabinoids and is the highest producing variation terpene plant in existence. Some plants produce like a single terpene, but this one produces up to 100 of them. So the plant itself is incredible and so finicky.
Yeah.
It's such a finicky plant. And so, when you have that much money on the line, the quality control issues become hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. And again, I just wish the industry would recognize all of these issues that they face: quality control, yield problems, pest control management. Those are education-based problems. Those are problems that are solved by people that actually understand, how do I deal with this particular unique finicky plant?
And these companies often rely on somebody to kind of design some type of onboarding, if it's there, and handle that, when there's an ability to automate a lot of that and actually have somebody walk in already be able to be more productive, or getting more and more productive in the first 90 days because they're doing some training on their own in their own time, right? Something that just it's just crazy to say out loud is, there are tax money paid community colleges that their students are taking courses that you have designed. Tax money is being paid to teach people how to get, these are the things we talk about, cultivation and kind of retail experience, those type of, there's got to be barriers to that. And so I think the question comes up is well, who is Greenflower to be able to be the one that sets this? And it's because there's been so much, you've been doing this for decades now, there's been so much rigor that's gone into getting to a point where taxpayer money can be spent for students to take courses that you have produced.
Yeah, I mean, all of us are kind of building the plane and blazing our trails as we fly it and walk it, and early on I realized that one of the big hindrances that cannabis faces everywhere is it's a credibility issue. That
totally.
Lawmakers don't believe the industry, and that's why we have these heavy-handed regulations, and the federal government doesn't seem to get or understand what's going on. So I see those as credibility issues, and that's why we back in 2017, just like the end of 2016, we started approaching schools. And it took us 4 years to get our first school to say yes to offering curriculum. But then it was so, I mean, not to say that this was a gift, but the pandemic was a gift for us in the regard of all these schools had to shift to online learning. And they weren't prepared for that. And so we have, this library that we had been building for all these
thousands
years.
of hours of coursework.
And it allowed us to go to these, after we got our first school and after literally 4 years of failing, to get our first school in, got their first school in, COVID hit, and all of a sudden they realized, well, if that school has done it, we'll give it a try. And it just dominoed, and we went from 0 to 20 schools from 2019 to today.
And tens of thousands of students?
Not quite tens of thousands. I mean, overall tens of thousands, not per year. But yeah, we're doing.
Yeah, overall, but have been impacted by.
Oh yeah.
By the coursework, whether it's the company has sponsored it, whether they've gone out to your website and signed up for them themselves because they're curious about cannabis and they want to interview for a job and have an idea what it is they're doing, or offered through higher learning. That's a lot of people.
We touch a lot of places in the industry. I mean, it's been one of the most difficult, but I am most excited about training the professionals in the companies. And for the simple fact that I've come to really understand, those professionals are the advocates. Those professionals are the thought leaders. Those professionals are the industry leaders. And so if you train professionals well, they go out and they build a sustainable industry. They build a powerful industry. So I'm really passionate about trying to get more cannabis companies to embrace the value of this training and these credentials, because I fundamentally believe, as somebody who really cares about the adoption of cannabis worldwide, that's the most effective way to get that in record time.
So what has the feedback been with cannabis companies directly, and some of the cannabis states require a certain fundamental level of training, some of them don't, but you'd think that any business would recognize the importance of having training for folks who never worked professionally in a domain.
It's tough though. Cannabis, we've talked about cannabis companies have a lot of priorities, a lot of demands. Sometimes leadership is focused on the right things and sometimes they're focused on the wrong things. So I can say at this point, we've had lots of visionary companies who really say, we're building this for the long term. We want to build a culture that really respects and values the industry and lifts the industry up. And they realize the ROI on training, they've opted in. A lot of the companies though haven't. They haven't prioritized it yet. And so we're keep working, keep working.
Well, I mean, the benefit of spending a modest amount of money, considering what cannabis companies spend money on, to have a workforce, even in your, let's say, your retail environment, that has done something when they come in and they're more prepared to talk to a customer, having never done the job before. They don't have to wait for the direct feedback from their manager who's thinking about compliance and might have other personnel issues and might be all over the place and not have the background in training themselves.
Let me make it even simpler.
Yeah.
We've now learned that when you train employees, they'll stay on average of 2.5 months longer. So that's not a huge number, except for when you realize that the companies are spending, hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars
per hire
on the turns.
So every single hourly employee that turns costs $3,000 to $4,000 in terms of resources to fill.
Yeah. So you extend the life of these companies by a few months and a half. It really pays for itself. It really pays for itself. And that's just slowing the churn issue. You go through all the better service, better culture, better products created, better optimization of operations. There's lots of, business benefits, but cannabis has been a tricky one to get them to understand that in the way that I think other industries already intuitively do.
Right. I mean, obviously every day is a windy road, but there's real value.
We're doing it, yeah.
In what you have built from a platform standpoint, and real value in terms of people's ability to get jobs, be successful in their jobs, retain their workforce, help their communities be prepared for the jobs of today. In certain parts of the country, and it's got to feel good.
And studying cannabis is seriously the funnest thing ever.
You found some real. My wife is actually enrolled in the Ganjier program. Sorry, I said it wrong.
No, it's Ganjier. That's right.
Ganjier.
You got to roll the R a little.
Man, cut that out. But basically, you found who are your instructors, not only for that program, but also for the rest of your stuff? Like you have like amazing.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we've had 700 different instructors. And really, I mean, when we call them instructors, they're operators. We have operators as instructors, and we just spend a lot of energy making sure they produce the right kind of education with us, you know, but it's operators, and it's the people that are doing the work, that are, you know, building these businesses, that have achieved this success. So it's just, you know, it's better to learn from people that are doing it than it is to learn from people that are teaching it.
Right. And it's like and how do you, I mean, find these experts? You've asked me, I think, before too, like there's somebody.
Source. Yeah, you source. And I mean, we have this vetting process, if you want me to like tease it out. You know, we look at past experiences, years in the industry, we look at other content they've done. You know, most real leaders have produced some form of content, webinars, talks they've done, you know, so go through that. We ask for references, we work with them a little. So it's a pretty rigorous process, actually. You know, it takes a lot of investments, why we had to raise the money to produce really good quality content. But, you know, the thing that's so amazing about cannabis is that the people that are really here, you know, we love it. We love it here. We love cannabis. And so education is the inherent act of lifting other people up with knowledge. It's a beautiful thing. You know?
It's a beautiful thing, and you know, you do it. You have a platform that does it at scale and does it better than any other platform that's out there that I've seen.
Thank you.
Education is everything. It's a big part of what we do on our team is talk to people about working in the industry and the realities of that, if it's the right fit for them or not. But let's talk about it. Let's teach you about if it's right for you or not, right? And that's
it's important.
It's important, and it's all because we're all still learning. We're also learning how to do this and get this right. And there's this, you know, real kind of excitement, and also this unique sort of community aspect in terms of, you know, how excited people are to get information in this space.
And the thing about cannabis that is like pretty remarkable is the depth and complexity of knowledge about what happens here is remarkable. You know, like I think all my other past lives in education businesses, and you know, whether it was meditation or it was yoga, or, you know, or mind-body medicine, they are kind of these slivers, and you can go deep in them. But if you go into cannabis, it's like agriculture, policy, investment, you know, retail, design of physical spaces, you know, retail design, distribution. You know, it's like all of a sudden you start unpacking it, product development, manufacturing, cannabinoids, terpenes, science, extraction, you know, like it's this huge pool to play with. And that's why we've built such a huge library, is it's like there's just so many areas to fall in love with and kind of get curious about. And I keep saying this, but I feel like the paradox is that if the cannabis plant, like if we wiped away its history, and like some scientist was walking along, was like, oh, cool, a plant, you know, and they took it back to the lab and they're like, let's study this plant.
Let's smoke it.
Let's study this plant.
Let's smoke it. Grind it out.
Yeah. I don't know if you go there first, but
someone did.
Right.
Who did it?
Somebody did. Actually, I know this. They put it in tents and they used it as aromas, actually, in the very early days. Anyway, if a scientist did that, and they started studying this plant, and they started studying the molecules, and they studied how fast it grew, and they studied all the properties, and they studied, you know, the genetic profiles, and you studied all the compounds that it creates and all that stuff, I think it would be on Time Magazine's cover as the most important celebration discovery of the 21st century. Right. And so it's a great plant. It's a great plant to embrace.
So many people have gotten value from it, and you obviously shared your story here today, and it's one of the most rewarding things about what I do is talking to people that have that relationship and connection and understand its value, and it's becoming more accepted and understood slowly, but it's happening, what that value is. So the Ganjier program, I said it, and the rest of everything, explaining how everything fits in terms of the green flower ecosystem of education, credentials, and training.
We kind of see them in different camps in terms of who they serve. So as you said, you know, we have these university partnerships around the country with great schools: University of Arizona, Syracuse University, University of Illinois, University of New Mexico, University of Denver. You know, like very proud of the fact that we've got real, legitimate traditional, educational institutions that have been supportive of that. So we have those, and then we also have these more workforce development community college programs, which are very focused on, like, you want to get a job in retail, dispensary associate. You want to get a job in manufacturing, there's a manufacturing track. And we see that whole ecosystem as helping people that want to break into the industry. Right? You need to understand the sectors, you need to understand how the industry works, you need to get a baseline level of proficiency and knowledge about cannabis, and that's that over there. Then we have Ganjier, which I consider more of an advanced level qualification. That's for people that really do want to become experts at cannabis products, at cannabis assessment, at cannabis effect profiles, and at cannabis service. And that was designed for the kind of retail ecosystem, but it's been fascinating to see so many people take that are CEOs or the head of cultivation to understand the quality aspect of cannabis and really the nuances of what dictates quality. So that's Ganjier. And then we have this part of the business that trains employees at cannabis companies. And we both satisfy the mandatory training requirements there when companies have them, but we do a lot of workforce development, and ultimately training people to become better in their roles. So they kind of touch different things, they touch different areas of the ecosystem, but it does touch a lot of different cool places. Yeah,
well, there's a lot of opportunities to impact, once you have the mind share and the curriculum to offer, right? You've been very, I think, inspirational in a lot of ways in terms of you sharing your story as a founder on, like, LinkedIn, and I enjoy it, and I think a lot of people do too. Talk to me about, like, advice for anyone that is like, I'm not going to be an employee, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. This is what I'm going to do in cannabis. I'm going to put all into it. What is your advice to anyone out there aspiring to be an entrepreneur that has an idea, whether it's plant touching or ancillary, to get involved and build something for this space? Any advice?
Yeah, you got to just do it. This is not my first business, and some have been very successful and some have failed terribly. And this one happens to be succeeding. And the thing I love about entrepreneurship is that nobody knows the map. Nobody knows, nobody has the path that you follow. You kind of just got to go build it. And to me, that's exhilarating and difficult and challenging, but that's what are we here for? Like, what are we here on this earth for besides to challenge ourselves and to test ourselves a little? So my suggestion to anybody that's thinking about entrepreneurship is you got to go do it. Now, that said, it's very, very hard. It's the most stressful thing you'll ever do. You're going to suffer way more than you think, and it's going to be very painful at times. But there's so much value in that too, in my mind, because that's how you become more resilient. That's how you learn what you have to offer the world. That's what kind of tests your values of what you're here to do, which I'm into. I'm all into that. So I don't know, do it.
Yeah, but let's do it. Just don't stop talking about it. Just start and figure it out when you go. You kind of have to jump in.
One of my values is fail fast, and I embrace that wholeheartedly. My personal values, and I failed fast a lot. But I've also, through failing fast, I've succeeded a lot more too. And I think that's the game.
Yeah, that's it. Well, anything you're excited about announcing in terms of the future of kind of your credentialing or training platform, like what's coming down the pipe? Anything else before we go?
I mean, I'm very excited with the partnership with Careers in Cannabis, and the fact that now
that engine platform.
Yeah.
So there's a job platform for cannabis that now all Greenflower grads that are credentialed by Greenflower will have that show up on their resume, on their profile, and they'll be able to connect with employers through that platform.
Yeah, I mean, we're excited to send all of our certificate holders and our credential holders into the platform as a way to help them get matched with employers. And so I'm excited about that.
I mean, that's great, because that's, again, one of the people are naturally curious and like to learn whether they're doing something or not, but also it's a big driver for a lot of people when they want training in cannabis is to get a job. So, within the ecosystem, we've really enjoyed, speaking with the folks that, are part of your sort of master class Ganjier program. It's been great people. We just recently helped one get a job with a company, Big Oil, here in California. Dan
Shout
Walters.
out to Dan, right? Shout out to Dan.
Dan Widmers. I always get his name wrong. Dan, you're the man. Dan the man. But Max, has been fantastic. You know, education in cannabis, filling a much needed opportunity, help this industry move forward, and I really appreciate you coming down.
Good to be with you, my friend.
Thank you.